All right, everybody. So today we're gonna use factoring to solve equations, and we've used this. I've used this word a few times. Quadratic equations. So remember, quadratic equations are where we have ax squared plus bx plus c, and so they're usually trinomials, but they can be binomials and they can even be monomials. But the main thing with the quadratic is where you have a variable squared, and so that's the main characteristic. All right, and so here's what I was just saying. So ax squared plus bx plus c, and notice how a, b, and c are all real numbers except for, a, b, and c are all real numbers. They could be any real number except for the fact that a cannot be zero. So in other words, like b and c can be zero, they can be gone, and you could just have an x squared, but a cannot be zero, right? Because if a was zero, then you'd have a linear function, right? Bx plus c, that's like y equals mx plus b. So you'd have a linear function if a were gone. All right. So that's a quadratic equation, is where you have ax plus bx plus ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And it doesn't necessarily have to equal 0, but that's how we're going to want to format it. All right, and the reason why we want to set things equal to 0 is because of what we call the zero factor property, or sometimes it's called the zero product property. So if you have a product of two numbers, and the product equals 0, the only way that can happen is if one of those numbers is 0, right? Like if I say what times 5 equals 0, or what times any number equals 0, there's only one way to get that, right? And that's if you multiply by 0. There's no other number you can multiply by another number to get it to turn into 0. And so if you have a product that says, okay, these two things multiply to get 0, then one of those two things has to be 0, right? Or both of them, okay? So if a times b equals 0, then either a has to equal 0 or b has to equal 0. All right, so here's the strategy, the procedure for solving a quadratic equation by factoring. The first thing you want to do is you want to get one side equal to 0, okay? So you want to rewrite the equation with one side equals 0. So what you're going to do is you're going to manipulate the equation by moving things around on both sides, right? By adding or subtracting for the most part. Sometimes you might multiply or divide, but usually you'll be adding or subtracting to get one side to be 0. Okay. Then what you do is you factor the side that's not 0, whatever side's not 0, you factor completely. Okay. And then we're going to use the zero product property, or the zero factor property, to factor, and then we'll have two binomials usually, right? We'll have something like this. Maybe like 2x plus 3 and x minus 4 or something like that, right? Equals 0. And so if that's the case, then zero factor property says, hey, either this has to be 0 or this has to be 0, right? So you can basically just set up two linear equations, and then you can solve those, which is pretty straightforward, right? 2x plus 3 equals 0. You guys could solve that in your sleep probably. And then the step 5, we check the answer in the original equation. And that's something that you don't always have to do, depending on the time and things like that. If you're on a test, and you have a little extra time, it's a good thing to do, or on the homework when you're just getting started. But it's not something that I recommend you do all the time. So then we state our solutions to the original equation. Like our solutions might be x equals 5, or x equals, in this case, negative 3 over 2, positive 4. All right, so that's our strategy. So something you can write down. You can take a picture if you'd like. And yeah, it might be a good thing to have in your notes just to glance at if you need to, if you forget how to do it.